Mark 13, as well as Matthew 24 and Luke 21, are called the apocalyptic discourse of Jesus. So this is Jesus talking about the future. And it's an interesting text where Jesus is responding to some inquiry of his disciples. Mark chapter 13, verses 1 to 4 here. It says, as Jesus was leaving the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Teacher, look, what magnificent buildings." And Jesus says, "Do you see all these great buildings? Not one stone here will be left on another. Every one will be torn down." Then as Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will these things happen? And what will be the sign that they are all about to be fulfilled?" They were curious. We're all curious about the future. We all have lots of questions. But you know what? These are the only two questions that are important. Are we alert or are we alarmed? What is your view of the future? Maybe some of you think, well, yes, we live in dangerous times. There's clear and present danger here. Are you alert about it or are you just alarmed? Some say, it's just business as usual. There have always been struggles, traumas, great disasters coming. Business as usual. Others might say, whoa, I'm not just alert, I am very, very alarmed. Apocalypse now. War threatening all over the place. Crimea, Iran, all of the buildup of nuclear warfare. Or ecological and cosmic devastation and destruction that's happening. Possibly economic collapse. And there are a lot of people who are just flat out frightened about the future. And yet others say, the best is yet to come. Science and technology will prevail over all of the political challenges, and the best is yet to come. Well, I don't know what your view of the future is, but our view of the future doesn't matter. Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, looking over toward Jerusalem, and Jesus took the opportunity to say, you see all these? Let me tell you what's going to happen. And then he goes into the apocalyptic discourse and the teaching about what is going to happen in the future. I don't know whether the disciples finished that conversation alert or alarmed. Were they frightened? Were they confident? Were they happy? Were they sad? It's not clear how they felt about the future. How do you feel about the future? Parents, grandparents, what kind of future do we anticipate our children are going to be stepping into and our grandchildren? What did Jesus say about it? And unfortunately, we sometimes read the text without much understanding of what Jesus was saying. We just put our 21st century spin on it all and think we understand it. But the purpose of Jesus was never strictly to satisfy our curiosity. The purpose of Jesus with the apocalyptic discourse was to help his disciples understand what was going to happen in their lifetime and in a more general way far beyond them. And the language of the Gospels helps us distinguish between these things that are going to happen and in those days other things are going to happen. And if you have a good literal translation as opposed to some of the modern paraphrases, you'll see those distinctions, and they're very, very important in unpacking all of this. I want us to dig into this a little bit, but first understand what these terms mean, alert and alarmed. Alert means to be watchful and ready to deal with whatever happens. It means to be mentally lively, clear-headed, and responsive, to know what's going on around you. In a more biblical sense, it means to have understanding that really comes from God. It means to weigh carefully and examine things and understand them from a biblical point of view. That's really alertness. And in this context of the apocalyptic discourse, it means to be aware of what the Bible says about the eschaton, the last days, the parousia, the coming of Jesus. That's alertness. Now, we can be alert about all kinds of contemporary events and be aware of what the news is saying and even have some ideas about what we think will happen. But frankly, folks, we're not alert unless we are looking at the future from God's point of view. You can listen to a lot of voices prognosticating about the future, but you will not be alert unless you're seeing with spiritual eyes. Alarmed means to be frightened and to be fearful, to be uneasy, to be apprehensive. There are some synonyms: fright, dread, terror, horror, panic, dismay. Alarmed. A lot of people are alarmed about the future. Most don't want to talk about it. Most don't want to think about it, but in their quiet, reflective moments, there's some worry going on, and probably with some pretty good reason. There are combinations that are possible here. You can be not alert, but alarmed. You can be not alert and not alarmed, or you can be alert and alarmed, or you can be alert and not alarmed. And we want to unpack each of those a little bit. So what does it mean to be not alert, but alarmed? There are a lot of people in the world who live this way. They don't have a clue what God is doing. They don't know what's going to be coming down the road, but they're reading the headlines. They're alarmed, but they're spiritually asleep. Their eyes are entirely on this world. They can think only in terms of the immediate circumstances that seem apparent. And if that's all you're looking at, yes, you have reason to be alarmed, to be frightened. Is that the way God wants us to live? I don't think so. There are also people who are not alert and they're not alarmed. They're in a reality coma. And this is probably the majority of people. And they sort of take their comfort in the fact that they're in the majority. Well, I'm not, I just don't think about that stuff. And they kind of are numbed down. They fill their life with entertainment. They live for today. Don't worry about tomorrow. And so they're not alert. They're not alarmed. They will be like the people in Noah's day. They will be like those people. And the floods just swept them over and they were gone. They're not alert. They're not alarmed. And they will not be prepared. This is the majority of people in our world. If you talk to them about end times and the coming of Jesus, or even apocalypse in any general way, not interested. I want to know, who's going to win the next golf tournament, or better yet, can't wait to get out there and start golfing, or whatever it is that anesthetizes us to the realities around us. That's what people clamor for. Entertainment. Not alert, not alarmed. Another possibility is to be alert and alarmed, to be aware of what God is doing, to understand what Scripture says, but we're on red alert. There are a lot of Christians that live this way. They're preparing for the worst. They're hoarding. It's almost like Y2K days. And they're aware, yes, Jesus is coming back, but what if we have to go through the tribulation, or what if, and so they're worried. They're panicked. Red alert. They don't have peace. They don't have composure. They may be believing that besides my own life of walking with God and holiness of life, I need to do all kinds of other things to prepare. I don't get that sense. I get the sense in Paul even talking in the end of his ministry in the latter letters. He's just saying, look, lead a peaceful life. Be calm. Work with your hands. Let people see the hope that's in you. They can't do that if you're living a panicked life. This is where our level of trust really finds reality or not. Are we trusting in our own resources, our own cunning, our own trying to figure out the future and respond to it, other than as Christians should all respond all the time to the Spirit of holiness who works in us? Alert, but alarmed. So is that you? The last of these ideas of is that you is alert, but not alarmed. Aware of the biblical teachings, trusting in Jesus, trusting that not only does he know the future, he holds the future in his hands. And as long as I am in him, I can live a life of composure. I can demonstrate by my lifestyle that even though I know apocalypse is coming, and even though I may not have all the answers to it, and by the way, by the end of the sermon, you still won't have all the answers. And you can study Revelation, you can study Daniel, you can study the Gospels. You know what? I don't think God meant for us to be that fully aware and clear about exactly what's going to happen when. You might have your ideas and theories, but please hold them loosely, because generally God surprises his people. Well, what does Jesus say? After Jesus predicted the destruction of the temple, he said to them, watch out. That's the same word as the Greek word for be alert, that no one deceives you. Many will come in my name, will come claiming I am he, and will deceive many. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nations will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places and famines. These are the beginning of birth pangs. Jesus was saying, hold your composure. Stay steady. Watch out. Don't be deceived. Don't let anybody come and tell you they have the final answer or they are the final answer. Going back to the text in the earlier verses, remember the question they asked Jesus was, tell us when these things will be and what will be the sign that they are to be fulfilled. Well, Matthew's version shows it even more clearly in terms of the way Jesus answered. Matthew 24:3 says, as Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately. Tell us, they said, when will this happen? Referring to the destruction of the temple. And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Are those one questions, two questions, or three questions? I think the disciples thought they were asking one question, that all of this would probably happen together. Certainly, if not one stone would be left on the other, and if you've seen the stones over there, we're not talking about, little field stones here. We're talking about massive blocks of limestone. In some cases, 8 feet high, 12 feet thick, 20 feet long, that would be all dismantled and cast down into the Kidron Valley. And Jesus is warning them. This stuff is going to happen. It happened in 70 A.D. when Titus finally broke through with his armies after several years of assault on the city. The people in Jerusalem did not listen to, for the most part, the advice of Jesus. Some did, some didn't. 97,000 were led away captive. 1.3 million Jews who were gathered in Jerusalem. People came running to the city for protection, exactly opposite of what Jesus said they should do. And they were starved to death. The story of Flavius Josephus, the Jewish historian, about what happened, it turns your stomach. You wouldn't want to see it on film. But Jesus was saying, the end is coming, but don't assume that it's related necessarily to all of what I'm going to tell you about. In Mark 13, you'll find Jesus saying to them to be on their alert, that they're going to be persecuted, that they're going to be brought before the Sanhedrin. The gospel has to first be preached. Let's not miss that idea here. It's more prominent in Matthew 24:14. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached to all the ethnoi, all the nations, and then will the end come. Here in Mark 13, in verse 10, and the gospel must first be preached to all the nations. So missions is a part of this whole eschaton, the whole future that's going to happen. Missions has a major role to play in it. We are committed to reaching the unreached people, and that's the task Jesus has given us to do. Jesus goes on to say that there will come a time of great, great persecution and great tribulation. Now, we've theologized that concept, and we're wondering, well, which tribulation, and what's the great tribulation, and when will that be, and will the rapture happen before, or will the rapture happen after, or in the middle of it? And so we try to figure it out theologically. And Jesus isn't interested in our figuring this out chronologically. He's interested in our being prepared for it. And there clearly was a great tribulation in that day. He says, if the Lord had not cut short those days, no one would survive. But for the sake, he says, of the elect whom he has chosen, he has shortened them. At that time, if anyone says to you, look, here's the Messiah, or look, there he is, don't believe it. False messiahs and prophets will appear and perform signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. So, be on your guard. Watch. Don't be alarmed. I have told you about everything ahead of time. Just basically a generation after Jesus said these things, the Romans came down. They laid siege to Jerusalem. Jerusalem was destroyed. Exactly the way he prophesied it happened. Every stone was cast down into the Kidron Valley. When the Turks came in the 16th century to rebuild the city, it was basically a field that had been plowed. Jesus goes on to say, but in those days, and again the distinction between these things that are going to happen, but in those days, following that distress, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from the sky, the heavenly bodies will be shaken. Jesus is quoting Old Testament passages here. People will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory. He will send his angels and gather his elect from the four winds and from the ends of the earth to the ends of the heavens. Some interesting ideas in these verses here. There will be celestial signs. There will be evidences in the heavenlies. Stars falling, heavenly bodies shaken. People will then see the Son of Man. There have always been celestial events wrapped up with the mighty acts of God in invading history. Whether it was a star coming from the east moving across the sky, or such a thing as the moon will be darkened and stars will fall from the sky in his second coming. God gives celestial portents of his activity. He is in charge of the whole universe. And it says at that time people will see him. Now we know that the world is round. Not everybody can even see the moon or any stars at one time because the world is round. How are they all going to see him coming at one time? I have a couple possible answers to that. None of them are biblical necessarily. But one is that the illumination of the one who's the light of the world probably will be so blindingly powerful that it'll make the sun look like it doesn't even exist, and that illumination will just envelop this entire sphere called planet Earth. That's one possibility. Another is digitally. It may well be that it'll happen because everybody will be forced to be seeing in some kind of a screen fashion what's going on with his coming to Jerusalem. I don't know, but every eye will see him. Every eye will behold him. This will not be done in a corner. It's not just a spiritual coming. He's coming in clouds with great power and glory, and he will send his angels and gather his elect from the four winds. There will be people from every kingdom, tongue, tribe, and nation, every part of planet Earth, but maybe more than planet Earth, because it says, and from the ends of the earth to the ends of the heavens. There's possibilities. Who knows? All that God has done in his world eternally, in his universe eternally. But whatever has been created, whether here on earth or anywhere else, Jesus is Lord of it. He goes on to say, now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twig gets tender and its leaves come out, you know that the summer is near. Even so, when you see these things happening, you will know that it is near, right at the door. And again, the word estin is there in Greek. It's not, I am right at the door. No, it is right at the door. What is the it? The it is all of this drama that is wrapped up in the year 70 AD. I tell you, this generation, not this race, will certainly not pass away until these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. So some of this eschatology has been fulfilled. Some of it hasn't. Those days are still yet coming, Jesus said. He says, but about that day or hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Be on guard. Be alert. You do not know when that will come. It's like a man going away. He leaves his house and puts his servants in charge, each with their assigned task, and tells the one at the door to keep watch. Therefore, keep watch, because you do not know when the owner of the house will come back, whether in the evening or at midnight or when the rooster crows or at dawn. If he comes suddenly, do not let him find you sleeping. What I say to you, I say to everyone, watch, be alert. What I say to you, my 12 who are sitting here, or 11 by that point, who are sitting here listening to this, watch, be alert. You don't know when he's coming. Is this meant to scare us? No. Being alert is not a response to fear. It's a response to reality. Fear is an emotion. Understanding reality is rational. It's realizing this world was not intended ever to be an eternal place for human beings. We weren't created primarily for this world. We don't understand all the reasons for God creating us, but He created us in His image and He put eternity in our hearts. And we long for that. Not just immortality, but eternity. The same kind of life that Jesus now lives in His glorified state. He is in the heavens with the Father, praying for us, knowing that the time is coming when we will join Him, when He will bring us together as His forever family. So Jesus says, what I say to you, I say to everyone, watch. Less than a generation after this happened, the Apostle Paul went around and planted some churches. By this time, oral transmission of text was going on. People were beginning to hear the teachings of Jesus as the apostles and others were telling the stories. And so, as the apostles' teachings were circulating around, some were beginning to be afraid that they'd missed the day. Or what about people who had died and they missed the day? And Jesus is coming soon, we believe that. But what are the implications of that? And so Paul wrote in 1 Thessalonians 5, he said, now, brothers and sisters, about times and dates we do not need to write to you, for you know very well that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. While people are saying peace and safety, destruction will come upon them suddenly as labor pains on a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. But you, brothers and sisters, are not in darkness, so that this day should surprise you like a thief. You are all children of light and children of the day. We do not belong to the night or to the darkness. So then let us not be like others who are asleep, but let us be awake. That same word, watch and be sober. So where are you in this picture? Are you alert? Are you alarmed? Where are you? Hopefully you're alert. If you're not alert, that probably means you're not alive spiritually. And many people are that way. But if you're alert, are you alarmed or are you not alarmed? What is your fear of the future phobia index? Do you think of the end times? Is your spirit dominated by fear or by faith? Are you looking forward to that day? The Apostle Paul, one of his last statements in 2 Timothy was, I fought a good fight. I finished the course. I've kept the faith. Henceforth, there's laid up for me a crown of righteousness, and not only for me, but for all who love His appearing. And I hope that's the dominant sense that you have as you think about the coming, as you think about the future, even as you think about the possibility of going through times of distress or tribulation, that overriding all of it is this strong hunger to see Jesus. That's what He wanted His disciples to be confident in. So, you've got some things to be thinking about and praying about as you continue on this dangerous road of living life here on planet Earth.